Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you one of the new features in version 9, but it relates to, I'm using the tool to create a quilting motif and similar to what I've got around here. So you can see here I've got little birds and hearts. Hopefully you can see that, the shape of the birds off the fabric here. So I scanned the fabric in and made my motifs. I won't be doing that in this video. I'll be using a different tool altogether, but just to show you that there's more than one way to do things. I've got little hearts in there as well. This was done in a Zoom meeting, which you can purchase the recording for if you want to go into how I did all of this. You don't need to use a fabric image. You can take any image and make yourself a motif to use for quilting. But of course, if you want to relate it to the fabric you're using in your quilt, then this is the way to do it. But today I'm going to show you a new tool for creating quilt motifs on lines through your quilt, which has been in the full version of Corel for some time, but they've just added it to in version 9 of the Bernina software to the SE version that we get with version 9, so we can access it through our art canvas. And it's lots of fun to use, and you can play around with all the settings and create all sorts of different things. So without further ado, I'll put a link to this product down in the description, just in case you want to find out other ways of doing these sorts of quilt motifs and lines on your quilt blocks. But if I'm going to go now straight into Art Canvas in the software to show you how to do it with this new tool. Okay, so I'll just close that website. And here I am in Art Canvas. So the new tool is called Fit Objects to Path, and I thought this might be handy for creating quilting lines with motifs. So I had a play and I came up with an idea. So you can actually make a mug rug if you want to just practice this. So I actually decided to do that, and I have an image of that mug rug somewhere. I'll show it to you at the end. Well, actually I should show it to you now. Okay, so here's the mug rug with the quilting motif on here. I've actually done this as a blackwork run, so it actually stitches everything twice, but I will be showing you how to do it as a proper quilting motif where it only stitches everything once as well. So without further ado, we'll go back to Art Canvas and we'll start creating this project. Okay, I'll close that and that. And here we are in Art Canvas. So first up, we need to create our line to represent our quilt mug, our stitching line for the outside of the quilt mug, we'll call it. And to do that, I didn't want to get confused by this page showing. So if you come up here to your settings, you can click on that gear wheel and click on Corel Draw and click on the page icon here at the top right, and here you can go to the page size tab, and it allows you to deselect the show page border. So we're going to deselect that, and while we're here we're going to change our units to inches if you haven't got inches on there already. Because we're doing a quilting type thing, I wanted to work in inches, so we'll click on that. That just changes Art Canvas, not Embroidery Canvas, to inches. Okay, then you can just go OK, and you can see my page border has gone now. I can zoom out and zoom in. There is no page border there anymore. I've just got a blank screen. It only takes it off for this design, so next time you open the software the page border will be back. Okay, so we need to create our outline for our quilt, as I said, and so that will be a square or a rectangle. Now you can make this any size you like, but for the mug rug I clicked on my rectangle tool, vector rectangle, or you can hit F6 on your keyboard and just left click and drag your mouse and then release your left button, and that will create a rectangle. If you want to create a square, just hold your control key down and then left click and drag, and that will constrain it to a square. Once you've done that, we can enter some sizes. So it is selected by default, but we need to go up to our select or pick tool, the blue arrow at the top of the tools, and then we can come up here to our transformation toolbar, which will allow us to change the size. Now, because I'm making a rectangle, I want the lock open, but if I was making a square, I would lock the lock so that I could constrain the width and height to be equal. But I'm going to change the width here to 9 inches. So I just highlight that and hit 9. And the height I'm going to make 6.5. So 6.5 inches. And enter. Okay, so there's my mug rug. Now, I'd like to know where the cutting line would be. That's the seam line, so that's the actual size of the mug rug. So let's create another rectangle that is 1/4 of an inch bigger all around to represent the cutting line. Now, you could do this a couple of ways, but the way I'm going to do it is, while it's selected, I'm going to click on copy and paste. And now I've got another rectangle exactly on top of that one. If you have a docker called objects in your dockers, you can click on that and you should then see under layer 1 rectangle, meaning there's 2 rectangles there. The top one is highlighted light blue. Things are much easier to see in version 9 in the objects docker, and if your objects docker is not there, you might find a little plus sign at the bottom of all your dockers. You can click on that and that will bring a pop-up menu, and you can click on objects and that will open it. If you haven't got your plus sign down there, you can come up to window dockers, and that will give you all your dockers to choose from as well, and just click on objects. Okay, so I've now clicked off, so it's not selected anymore. So I need my pick tool active, my blue arrow highlighted, and I need to click on that top rectangle so that it's selected, and then again I'm going to leave my lock unlocked, and I'm going to change the width to 9.5 inches and tab to the height and change that to 7 and enter. So now I've got a cutting line that's half an inch bigger each direction, but because it's centered, I've got a 1/4 inch margin all the way around there. And I could have also done that with the contour tool, but this way works quite quickly and just as easy. Okay. Now I know where I want to put my quilting line. So you could make this mug rug out of scraps. You could piece pieces together. You could do whatever you like. Or, as I said, you can make this a different size and turn it into an actual quilt block. Or use a quilt block that you have already designed and add these quilting lines to it. So I want to make my line first that I'm going to put all my motifs on. So for that I'm going to use the pen tool. Now don't confuse it with this tool down here, which is your outline tool, and that allows you to choose the thickness and colour and all sorts of things of the outline. We don't want that one. You need to go to your drawing tools, which is a little wiggly line with the plus on it. Freehand draw is the one showing by default, but if you come down to the little black triangle in the bottom right hand corner, you can click on that, and there you will find the actual drawing pen tool. So click on that to make it active. You'll see the icon changes on the toolbar, and your cursor also changes to a pen shape. Now I have done a couple of videos on YouTube about drawing smooth lines in Corel, but you can reference those if you like. I'll put those down the bottom in the comments as well, so in the description, sorry, as well, but I will just do this fairly quickly. So to start the line, you need to left click, and I want to start out here on the actual cutting line so that my line actually goes off and out of the stitching area, so that it's a neat finish. And so I've clicked, and then I have a blue string attached to my cursor. And so to make my next line, I'm going to left click and drag. And as you can see, where I drag my cursor to, I have not released my left mouse button, hold it down, but wherever I drag my cursor to on the mouse pad, it's and of course on the screen, it is actually affecting the shape of the first part of that line from where I first clicked to where I second clicked. And you can see these blue arrow type things which are affecting it too. So I want to just make a fairly smooth line, so I'm going to stop about there, and now I've got a string that's attached to that second click, and it's being affected by this arrow coming out here. So it's going to come out that way, but if I go up, it'll go up there. If I go down, it'll go down there. I'm going to go up just a little bit here, and then I'm going to left click again and drag again, and again my shape will be affected by where I drag to. So I'm going to release that there, then I'm going to come down here and click and release it there, and then I'm going to click and release it there, and then I'm going to click on the edge. You'll see the little word edge when you come to the cutting line, so I'm just going to click on that edge, and to get rid of the tool, because you've still got that string, just hit your enter button, or you can double click on that last point. Now this is probably a bit too wiggly for my liking, so don't worry too much, but don't make too many nodes. You only need them to change your curve direction, so as the less nodes you make, the smoother the line will be. But I'm going to actually edit this. Now to do that, you click back on your select tool so that you've no longer got your pen tool, and then click on the reshape tool, or F10 on your keyboard, and that will actually turn the line blue, and it will actually show up little, where those clicks were, those nodes are little diamonds. Whoops, I've lost it again. Let's just get it again. There we go. So they'll show up there. Now they're very tiny. You can make those larger. So if you come up to your settings tool again, your little gear up here, and click on Corel Draw again, you will see in the left hand side a tab called Nodes and Handles. So left click on that, and you can actually change the shape of the nodes for the shape of the little icons for each of the different types of nodes, but I'd leave them on the defaults till you learn what they are. But you do have at the top here a node size, and it's small by default, so I like to make mine large so I can see them, and especially when I'm teaching, so you can see them hopefully. Alright, so when you've done that, go OK. Now you can see I've got much larger little diamonds here. Now if you click on any one of those diamonds, that selects that node, and you'll see it fills in with blue, and the arrows which define the shape of the line are there. You will also see that the node before and after's arrows are also showing, because the difference between these two arrows is what defines this curve here, and the difference between this arrow and this arrow defines this curve here. So I would actually I'm going to select this one. I'm going to move this one over a bit and down a bit, and then I can move this one over a bit, and I'm going to take this arrow, so that actually selects that node, and move it up so I can get a more a kind of smoother line. I might make this one go out a bit, and then I might delete this one. It's really so I just selected that and pressed delete on my keyboard. That you can see now this has changed to a circle, so when I click on that, I can actually now move this arrow out by itself. So there are 3 different types of nodes. There's a symmetrical node that is smooth, which is these diamonds. Okay, and that when you look up here at the types of nodes, so you must be in the reshape tool to see these tools, the one that is grayed out is the one that is active. So that's a bit confusing, but if this node is selected, the one that's grayed out up here is active. So that's a symmetrical node, and for that one, both these arrows work as one. So if you pull one in, the other one comes in, and they work like a windmill in that if you swing them, they will turn together. All right. This node here is also a smooth node, if we look up here, but the arrows work independently, so it's not symmetrical. It's a smooth node, but it's not symmetrical. So I'll move that to there. And these are end nodes. The third type of node is a cusp node, which will show up as a square, I think. Might be... can't be a diamond, has to be something else. Anyway, a cusp node will be a straight line or a point. So if you've ended up with points here, you've ended up with cusp nodes. You can change these nodes. So I could change this node here to a cusp node, and oh yes, it turns into a square. So diamonds for the symmetrical nodes, circles for the smooth nodes that are not symmetrical, and squares for the cusp nodes. And that means I can then make a point if I like with my node. These work completely independently all together, these arrows. So length, direction, and direction. Alright, I'm going to change that back to a smooth node. So smooth symmetrical node. Okay, now I'm going to bring this arrow back a bit, which will change that line there a bit. When you're happy with that line, you can click back on the select tool and you're done for that part. So that's created your line. Now I'm going to put some motifs on the line. Now I'm just going to use some of the inbuilt motifs, but you could have created your own motif. You can also use lettering or other images to put along this line with this tool. So it's very versatile. But we're going, for this exercise, I'm just going to use the inbuilt heart shape that comes with the software. So we have here basic vector shapes under the rectangle tool. If we click on, I'm just going to click off so nothing's selected first, and then click on that tool. And when you click on that tool, its properties come up here in the toolbar, and I have used the heart before, so that's showing right next to this pen and the line type. You've got a drop down menu with shapes, so you can choose. There's not a huge amount of shapes in here, so as I said, you can create your own shapes to put along the line or your own motifs. And if you do that Zoom meeting, you'll see how to do that. Alright, so let's stick with the heart for now. Now I want a symmetrical heart. I don't want to stretch it out or anything, so I'm going to hold my control key down and I'm going to left click and drag a heart. Don't worry about what size it is because we're going to size it. So we're going to make the first one 1/2 inch, 0.5 of an inch. So we'll select it by going up to the pick tool and clicking on that, and then we're going to lock the lock this time because we want to keep it symmetrical, and we're going to change the size to 0.5 and enter. Okay. Now I want a second heart, but I want it bigger. So I can just hover over this while I've got my select tool, and I'll get the 4-headed arrow. I can left click and drag a copy down here. When you release your mouse, you'll get a little box which asks you, do you want to move it here, copy it here, or cancel? I'm going to copy. So now I've got a second heart here, but I want to make this 0.9 of an inch. So again, with the lock locked, with the heart selected, I'm going to change this to 0.9 and enter. And you'll see that it both width and height changed to 0.9. Okay, we've got 2 hearts now. Now we need to open our Docker to use the tool. So you can, if you haven't used it before, you can go up here to Object, and you'll find Fit Objects to Path. Just click on that and the docker will open. But if you've used it before, it could be down here in your docker bar. So you can just click on it there to open it up. And now we're going to select our objects, and the last thing we select is the path. So I'm going to select the small heart first. So I've got my pick tool, I'm going to click on the small heart, and I'm going to hold my shift key down to select multiple objects. So hold your shift key down, click on the second heart, and you can see they're both selected now, and then click on the wavy line. So come into the middle here, you don't want to accidentally click the rectangles, come here somewhere and click on that line, and now those three things are selected. You can check by going back to your objects docker, and you can see that the curve and the two hearts are highlighted blue, meaning they're all selected. So I'll just go back to the Fit Objects to Path docker. If you look in the Fit Objects to Path docker, it only shows that two objects are selected. That's because the last object you select is actually the path. So don't worry too much about that, so long as you've selected everything and selected your path last of all. And then it asks you, do you want to keep the original source objects? And I'm going to click on that and say so that I do keep those originals, because I'm going to use them again after my first putting them on the path the first time. And then in the duplicates output, we leave group all objects blank, and then you've got how many duplicates do you want. And the first time I did it, I put 7 in there. So this is where you can start to play around with how many copies of the hearts do you want along your line, or indeed your motifs. So for this exercise we'll put 7. Don't worry about the path here, it'll be treat as contiguous by default. Object positioning, we want them positioned in the order we selected them in, but you've got options there too, all sorts of options there. So when you get confident with the tool, you can try all those options out to see what they do. Distribution, uniform object spacing, and again you can actually create a reference point spacing as well. So you can check that out in the help menu for Corel if you would like to find out what it does, but how about just play with it. But we'll leave it at uniform spacing for this exercise. And now we've got the reference, which is the center of rotation. And what that means is which bit of your motif do you want to touch the line. And in our case, we want the bottom center of the hearts to touch the line. So the hearts will turn so that they are pointing towards the line. You'll see that shortly. But we need to tell the software where that origin point is. So in this case, we're going to click on this little box here at the bottom center of this grid, so that it is the middle bottom point. Then under rotation, I'm leaving the rotation to follow the path. So as I said, that will turn the hearts so that they actually sit at angles compared to the line. Leave everything else the same and apply. And there you go, it was as easy as that. I've got all these lovely hearts along my line. Now you could leave it like that if you're happy with that, but I'm going to go a little bit further so that you can see some other options. So I'm going to click off. All of these are still individually selectable, so I could select this heart and move it back here a bit, or I can delete it. It's entirely up to you. What we want to end up with though is hearts that actually touch the line, like these do too. If I zoom in, they're right on that line. Okay, I'll click off. So now I want to put some on the bottom side of the line, facing out the other way. So I'm going to select my heart and I'm going to turn it upside down, and we have a mirror tool here, just actually next to the heart image, and we want to mirror vertically so that the heart is upside down, and we'll do that with a second heart, make that upside down. For some reason we end up with 2 hearts here when we ask to keep the originals. I'm not quite sure why, but we only need 1 and we need the upside down one, so let's select the other one and delete it. Alright, so you've got 2 upside down hearts. Now this time when we select, we're going to select the large heart first. So the large heart will be at this end of the line and this end and the other end of the line, and all the others will be in between. Whereas with the first time we did it, we selected the small heart, so that's why the small heart's here and here. Alright, so select your large heart, hold your shift key down, select your small heart, and then click somewhere on that line so that it selects the line. We don't want them to line up directly opposite, but you could. So if you wanted to, leave the duplicate number the same, but I'm going to change it to 8 so that they're staggered. And the only other thing I'm going to change is the origin, and this time we want it at the center top so that the bottom of the heart touches the line. So we'll click in this little black box up the top. Alright, so I'm going to apply that. And there we have all our other hearts, and as you can see they look more random because I used a different number of duplicates, so that looks quite pretty. Now it ended up actually with a large heart here and a small one here because it was an even number of duplicates. So in actual fact these aren't going to be of any use to us because they're in the seam allowance. So I can click off and select both those hearts and delete them by pressing delete on my keyboard, and same down here, select both of those and delete them, and select both of these, and actually I'll box select those because there's probably 3 there, and delete all those. Okay, so we only have a graphic so far, so we need to turn this into embroidery. Now when you convert a vector graphic with the convert tool in the Bernina software, the graphic disappears because it is being converted, so it becomes stitch data and it's no longer a graphics data. So if you want to keep this to use in another project or something as an image, then now is the time to export this image. So go File, Export, and you can export it to wherever you like, and you can choose what sort of image you want. I would suggest you choose a vector type image. So JPEG is not a vector type image, it's a raster file or a bitmap. So we're going to go to the drop down menu, and you cannot do a CDR from Art Canvas, so you can only do that from the standalone software. So the other alternatives are WMF or EMF are 2 good alternatives here for you to choose, either EMF or WMF, and then export it. But I'm not going to do that right now, so I'll just cancel that, but I suggest you do that and save that image. Cancel. Okay, now we need to select everything except the outer lines. I don't want to convert both the cutting line and the stitching line to stitches just yet. So I'm going to go to the Objects Docker in the Docker box, and I'm going to click on the top heart, and you'll see it get selected there, and see it's random. This one is actually this one in the middle. You would think it'd be the start of one of these lines, but no, they're quite randomly placed there. So click on that one. Come down holding your shift key. Depending on the size of your monitor, you might be able to get all the way to the curve, which is just above the 2 rectangles. Otherwise you're going to have to move your scroll bar, but hold your shift key down so that when you click on the word curve, the curve will select and everything in between. So I've now selected all the hearts and that curved line, but my 2 rectangles are not selected. And then I come up here to convert. Now because I've done all this with the default, it's 0.5 points my width of my line, so that is quite fine enough to convert to a nice running stitch. So we'll convert that, and that will bring you through to embroidery canvas. I'll just go into True View, and there is your stitching created. But as you just saw with our sneak preview, so I'll go back to design view, there are jump stitches everywhere because these have just randomly placed themselves, and the software has converted them in the order that they were in Art Canvas, so there's no real logic to this. And as I said, there's two ways to treat this. You can have your quick and easy way, which is to apply Blackwork Run to this, which will mean that everything stitches twice, but you get rid of all these jump stitches. So while everything's selected, you can go into your Edit toolbox and apply Blackwork Run. You click on the tool, and then you have to enter an entry point, and I'd probably suggest you start at the beginning of the line here. And that's all you need to do, and as you can see, all those jump stitches have gone. So I'll go into True View, and if we play the stitch player, and I'll just bring the speed down a little bit, you can see that, I can go up a little bit faster. It's going to stitch there, and it will go around each heart twice. I'll just slow it down now. So it's going back around that heart, and then it's coming back along this line, going around the heart, and then coming back around the heart, and then coming back along this line. So as you can see, everything is stitching twice. But that's fine if you want to make the embroidery the hero of the project, so to speak. But if you want it just as more a subtle quilting line, and you have other things on your quilt block that are more important, then you might want this as a single line. So I'll close that stitch player, and I'll undo that Blackwork Run. And so now if I go out of True View, I'm back there with all my jump stitches. So if I select that, so if I look at this, I need, in order to be able to stitch this in one line, if I zoom in here, I can stitch from here around a heart, and I'll come back to the line. Then I can keep stitching along the line, around the heart, and back to the line, and keep going along the line. But to do that, I need to break that line up. So that is the next thing to do. In your colour film, which shows whether you're, in this case it's showing colour blocks, so I'm just seeing one colour block because they're all one colour. But if I click here, I'll show objects. You can see all your hearts, your wiggly line, and your other heart. Okay, so they didn't even put the wiggly line before or after all the hearts. We're going to click on that curve, that wiggly line, to select it. So if I zoom out, you can see that only that wiggly line is selected, and the jump stitches associated with it. Alright, I'll go into True View so it's a little less confusing, and I have the handles around the wiggly line, and the wiggly line is selected in the colour film. I'm going to go to the Edit toolbox and expand it. So we already had that open for Blackwork Run if you're following along with me. So we're now going to go down to the knife tool. Now if it's not showing at the bottom of your Edit toolbox, you might need to expand with a little black arrow the rest of the tools on your screen. But it's near to the bottom, just click on the knife tool. Because you had it selected, that line will now turn pink. And we're now going to cut that line into the pieces we need to be able to make this stitch in one go. So we'll zoom in here. So we need to cut through this pink line at the bottom of each heart. And all you need to do is left click and then go straight across where you want to cut it and left click. Now we can keep going and do all this in one step. So if I left click here, I can cut back through that one. Then if I come up here, I can left click. I'll zoom in so I get it accurate and cut through that one. And then I can come up here, left click, and cut through that heart. And it's just a matter of, sometimes you might need to click twice to get around a curve, but it's just a matter of making sure you cut through that line at the bottom of each heart. You could do it, one cut at a time, but you'd have to keep reselecting the line. This is much easier and quicker. Nearly there. Whoops, it might not be at a very good angle. We'll go one more. That's better. I think that's the last one. Yes. So when you've cut through the last time, just hit enter and that will break up your curve. And if you look in the colour film, you can see you've got all sorts of little short lines. Now, we still haven't solved the problem because we now have to put these in the correct stitch order. So, where do we want to start? The most logical point would be this part here. So click off so nothing's selected. Make sure your select tool's active and click on the first part of the curve. Now I'm going to go back out of True View so you can see what I've selected because it will turn pink. Okay, and that's probably easier for you to see as well. Then if you hold your control key down, you can click on the first heart that touches where that line ended. Whoops. If you've got your control key down and you use your mouse scroll wheel thinking you're going to zoom in, you won't. You'll zoom sideways. So if you need to zoom in and out, release the control key, but don't forget to press it down. You need to have it held down when you're selecting. So we're going to select that first heart. That's turned pink. Now we need to select this little bit of line in there. That's turned pink. We select the heart, the line, the heart, the line, and it should auto scroll. No, not while the control key's down. So release your control key if you want it to oh, it's still not going to auto scroll. So you might need to zoom out and zoom in. Put your control key back down to continue selecting. Now if you select the wrong thing by mistake, just while your control key's still down, just click on it again so that it deselects. Must be a heart there, yes. And this bit of line here, and this heart, this bit of line here, and this heart. Just zooming in there. This bit of line, this heart, 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 this tiny bit of line, this heart, and that line. Once you've selected everything in the order you want it to stitch, you just come up to the little icon that says Sequence by Selects, which is the 1, 2, 3 icon, and left click on it. And voila, all your jump stitches have gone. It is now stitching in the right order with no jump stitches. It's even moved the start and end points of the hearts so that they're starting and ending at the line. So that's really great. If we run our stitch player, here it goes. So it's stitching the line around the heart, around the next heart, and so on. This jump stitch here is just an indicator because I've got the settings for the design to start and finish in the center of the design. That will not stitch. That's just an indicator of where the start and end will be of the whole design. You can change that, but that's for another video. Some machines require you to have the start in the center of the design for the hoop to be aligned. So probably not a good idea to play with that setting if you're a beginner until you know what it's doing. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Oh, well, I should finish making the rug mug for you. So if you bring, I don't have my vectors showing, but the vector image of the rectangles is there. I just need to come up here to show vector artwork, which is this triangle, circle and square icon. So if I click on that, there are my lines. So I can now create a stitching line, and I would do it in a different color so that you can hoop up your wadding and your top fabric and then stitch this pattern, and then we're going to lay another piece of fabric over the top, which will be your backing fabric, to stitch the stitch line. So the backing fabric will go face down on top of your embroidery, and all you need to do for that is to get your select tool so that everything's stopped running like the player. Yep, I'm all free. I haven't got any tools now, so I can go to the digitized toolbox, and I'm going to make an open object and single run. And as I said, I'm going to choose a different color. I'll choose pink, and you can get really technical here and line up so that you get a perfectly even gap here, but I'm just going to do it quickly. I like to back stitch at each end of my openings for things that I'm going to turn so that it doesn't unravel or cause a mess when I'm turning. So I'm going to left click here on this line. So I'm basically going to trace around this rectangle. I'm going to come a little bit to the left and left click, and then I'm going to go back over the top of that same bit of stitching and go to the first corner. Left click on the corner, then you can come down and left click on the next corner, come over and click on the next corner, and the next corner, and then come up here, zoom in so you can see how much gap you want to leave, probably about that much. So I'll left click there and then come back to back stitch and left click again and hit enter. So there's my stitching line for the mug rug. Now you may want to create a placement line before you start, so that you know that you're actually going to cover the whole embroidery. So that you know, with your top piece of fabric, because there'd be nothing worse than doing it all and then your fabric was a bit short. So you can just create a rectangle placement line that sits over the top as well. That's entirely up to you. So I hope you enjoyed that little project. There's lots in there to learn, and there's lots in there to experiment with and have fun with and see what else you can come up with. So comment it below if you think there's any other uses for that tool, the Fit Along Path tool. What would you use it for? Okay, I'll catch you next time.